So before it falls out of my head, I wanted to talk about a couple of things that I guess I lost my train of thought or it went someplace more interesting. That my previous video, there's a couple of things that I noticed when I rewatched it, and I rewatched my videos where I was not very thorough. I mentioned one of the problems of using a gel pen because it was leaky. Now, that actually turns out to really matter. And it's not like if you've got an inappropriate piece of paper and you are doing watercolor or something like that, and it soaks and it crinkles the paper. When you're writing with a pen on a book, if it's on a page and you write on a page and then you leave the page, all is good. But if you're writing on a book and you turn the page and you're writing, if you have a wetter ink or slower drying ink or just certain kinds of ink, that will, when you turn that page, it will leave material where it's facing. And if you write on the back of that page, it could make it even worse. And what I ended up doing is when I started, it was only on one side of the page. And I even noticed this, but it was really subtle and I didn't have it in my head. And I didn't like the idea of wasting half the pages because I wasn't taking notes on the off page. And so I wanted to start a new book from scratch with writing on both sides. And when I turned the page and I wrote, I left, it's like a texture in the background. It's like, it's not, it's just kind of dirty. And it was bad. And so what I did is I took a page from learning to draw. I'm kind of learning to draw. I haven't really spent any time at it, so I guess I can pretend like I'm going to learn to draw one of these days because I have all the tools and I made a thing of it. Yeah, so I'll probably like do a little bit of that live stream just to show me with my process and talk about that as well. When you're interested in one thing, all the peripheral things ought to be interesting as well. And if you're kind of bored or frustrated or out of ideas, or you want to explore a little bit, kind of like I had mentioned the artist with many different kinds of paper. Well, I wanted to try like different kinds of pen, or I wanted to try, the difference between pencil and pen and typewriters and typing on a computer. And there's even software on a computer, which I didn't mention, which acts like a typewriter and refuses to let you go and edit previous text, which, okay, sure, cool. There's all kinds of stuff that a person can explore as in terms of being a writer. I wanted to try drawing because I fell in love with this one artist, Gabrielle's drawings, a very specific kind of like caricatured cute face, and it was just so adorable. Like it really spoke to me. I'm like, okay, well, she offered a way too expensive package for learning to do it. Like she's got one thing where it's like you're a subscriber up to a service, not like a Patreon or anything like that, but you're a subscriber to a paid service where she is a tutor for classes. And I wasn't ready for that, partly because I wasn't interested in anything but that thing. So I think I spent something like 25 Canadian on just this package, and it turns out to be an incredibly thin, like, it's some people aren't fit for education. Some people do better than they can teach, or better than they can even show. And sometimes a person is good and passionate and can show their perspective, and that's good enough for some people to just pay attention and learn. And that's kind of the situation I was in, where there was a lot of incomplete stuff there because I didn't know anything about anything. So I was kind of, I was partly experimenting, which is fun, and I was exploring, and I was doing research, which is fun. And there was some missing bits and pieces that I had to kind of to do wrong, and that's part of the growing experience, because I'm not afraid to start by being bad. And so I paid for that, and I fiddled with that. I'm still fiddling with that, and I'm at the uncanny valley phase. So I'm like, I've gotten really far in the few sessions that I've sat down and actually tried. And I went to pencil to try that and to explore with that. And that's kind of like, it's not writing, but it's kind of almost a little bit sort of in the same direction as writing. So it's kind of the thing that I kind of went to, and that I can go to that, and then I can come back to writing. I can go to that if I want to be like kind of in the same almost atmosphere. Like, I don't have to change context. I don't have to move to a different beautiful room. I can just pull out a sketchbook, and I can do that for a while, and then I can pull up my ruled paper, and I can write for a while, and I can repeat. And I might be able to pull that off for quite a long time, as opposed to getting up and going and doing something else in a different room and then coming back. I can kind of stay in the same room. Writers have this idea that the coffee shop thing, kind of like the little black book idea of writing in this classic thing. And there's the idea of going to some other, like a cafe of some sort, and writing there. There's a romanticism, and I've heard one author specifically bring this up, and he says, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I can imagine it being an incredibly distracting thing, but honestly, I've done creative writing on a bus, so challenge accepted. I will be doing that. I will be. I'll also be bringing my laptop and working on the book and stuff like that. The biggest problem with exploring out in that direction with that idea is it costs money to go places and do things. So maybe I'll start with a library. I'd love to start sitting in a park or something like that, but it would have to be like a dog-free zone. Good luck with that. And it would have to be a really nice day, not too hot, not too cold, not too wet. Good luck with that. So, library it is. Nice and quiet, and just distracting enough to be a challenge in that respect. So I was talking about one side of the page, and so unlike an artist that would have to deal with pages in a certain way, a writer, you'd think, wouldn't have to care, but it turns out the kind of pen does matter. And the gel pen, although it was a smooth writing experience, and gel pens are like 0.7, which is most ballpoint pens, at least in school, I started with 0.5, and that was what I was used to. And I fell in love with a very specific kind of pen from back in the day. Papermate is a company that makes pens, and their standard model of pen was just this regular blue, and I didn't like black ink. They had, blue, black, red, right? And so the blue was on sale one day, and I had been using their pens for a long time, and pocket protectors, that's a thing, right? Okay, so from like the 50s, you imagine like the glasses that are now in fashion again, and the little pocket protectors and the nice clean shirts, and the pocket protector was actually there because it was actually important, because you'd have a pen sitting there and it would just leak. But I had that in my jeans, and I still love these pens. And I guess they improved over the years, or maybe I started treating them better or whatever. And I loved that pen, and it was really, really leaky when it first came out. Like, I still have the habit, you get a pen and you're like, to get it to start. And then I would put it on an angle and kind of do that, and then turn it a little bit, and then on the other side. And I'd actually do that, and I'd essentially be wearing away part of the metal around the tip, and it would make it leak on purpose. It would actually warm up the ink too, which was an interesting experience. So I'm used to leaky pens. So when I went to a gel pen, I was totally on board. Like, oh my God, this is just like the olden days. And I really liked it. So I started using them. But you turn the page and it rubs off. Okay, so that's something to think about, is where it's going to be, how it's going to dry. And I ended up learning, which is why I brought up the sketching. one of the things that a sketch artist will do is when, and I don't have my other camera set up, so when you're on a page and there's something drawn on, and there's something drawn here, and you want to draw something here, you can't put your hand here and draw. You can't lift your hand up because that's hard. So one of the things you can do is you can take the entire thing and you can turn it upside down, and you can draw upside down on the appropriate side. It's doable. But if you don't want to do that, or you can't do that because you don't know how, it's complex, it's all kinds of things, then what you have to do is you have to take a plain piece of paper and you have to cover the stuff that you don't want to smudge, and you have to put your hand there, and then you can draw. People that are left-handed have a lot of problems smudging stuff as they're drawing like this, and as the hand comes in contact with everything that they've like just written. So really good pens will still just be wet enough that they'll end up with a little bit of inking on the hand. So you can tell if somebody's left-handed and they write by looking at that hand. And so I ended up getting a piece of paper, and I ended up getting a piece of paper that wasn't quite the right size. So I cut it so it wouldn't stick out too much. You know, get yourself a pair of scissors. And I'm like, again, I'm bad at this, so it's okay. I'm a little kid. I act like a little kid. It's like I find myself some blank paper but I want to see it. I want to get it. So like I made a little bookmark. Cool. Okay, so I was using this, and I don't think you can actually really see it. Let's see if I can show it. But it's smudged. Hopefully you're not making out any actual words there from whatever spoilers I don't want to release. No, that should be okay. Phew. But I mean, page after page after page, and I would have this there. I would have this there. I want to take my new page that I've just written on, and I would fold it, and then I would write on the new page, and this would kind of soak up the ink and prevent it from bleeding through the next page. But you know what? I don't like it. I don't like the concept, and I'm at the point when I know, I recognize that it's cheating, that I've got margins on the page already, and that I've got the small size book, and that I've got a certain thickness of paper, a number of pages, and a certain thickness of the cover itself. If I'm using half the pages, I'm artificially inflating that number of books. I know that, and I don't like the idea of having to do this. I don't. But I have to. But I mean, I have to because I really want to use a certain kind of smoothness of pen. And I guess I can explore getting a higher quality pen with ink that's going to dry really quickly. And maybe I'd only have to worry about that wetness factor from like the very last little section of the bottom of a page as I turn it. Okay, maybe I should just like, you know, I just don't want to. I'm grumpy and I'm old and I don't want to change. I like what I got. I've already done all that work and I just want to get to the writing. And this is just one of those things I don't want to concern myself with anymore. And I don't mind telling people like look, that I've done 4, but you know what? I'm only writing on half the pages. I don't tell people that. I don't have to feel bad. I have an explanation. I think it's valid. It sounds pretty good. Okay, so that's bleed through onto the next page where you've got that ink thing smudging off. And the other thing that I mentioned like the margin thing and running out of pages with that one, with my very first one of those that I was filling up. I was very quickly approaching the last page and I had no idea where the story was going to go, but I knew it was nowhere near. To say done doesn't really mean anything for this kind of writing. Because it's meant for world building. It's meant for exploring certain moods and stuff like that. It doesn't generally turn into a plot, but I had a thing I wanted to get across with that particular story, and I hadn't gotten there. And it's pretty rare for me to have some idea in my head before I write. It's not part of it certainly isn't part of the process anymore, although sometimes I have some things kind of in mind, that it floated to my head. I'm like, okay, well, I want to think about drag racing, or I want to think about something like that, and I'll have that idea and I'll just kind of go wherever. This particular thing, I had a point. I wanted to get someplace. And I was nowhere near when I was running at the end, and I thought, okay, well, I don't want to stop. And I don't want to go into another book. And I don't want to go into another book because I really don't like the idea of having like half the story in one book and half the story in another book. And I've got an example over here. Okay. So these are a couple of books by Charles Dickens. This is a perfect example of it. Okay, you're not going to see that very well. Focus. There, hey. Okay. Notice how it says Old Curiosity Shop 1? That's because there's another one here. Focus. No. Face is nice, but we like book. We like book. Book is good. The book is the good. Oh my, I feel like, okay, well, you get the idea. You can kind of see a number 2 there. Fine. And you can think to yourself, no harm done. No harm done. Harm done. I've got number 2. I don't have number 1. I don't like the idea that different books can end up finding themselves separated. Somebody thought that they could buy the book and they didn't realize that the number 1 meant something. Somebody bought half of this and I got the other half because I wanted to at least have it so I can begin that series so that maybe I can get the other one, maybe from that same person, one day in the future. So I don't like the idea of writing and kind of putting it on, continuing it to another book, because things get orphaned and separated and stuff like that. And I hope that never happens, but it happens. So what I ended up doing is I'm writing, and I ran out of pages. And I made it okay to run out of pages. And because I was only writing on one side of the page, I turned the entire thing upside down and started writing on that side of the page, going backwards, essentially. And I did that for a very, very long time. And it comes to a point where I'm like, I'm going to run out of pages going in the other direction. And some part of me realized that. But what ended up happening for that particular piece is it was no longer exploration and mood and characters. It was a story, and it might not have even been a short story, but I think, if it were properly edited, it would be a short story. Because I realized that I might be misremembering it, but I had 10 characters that had personalities that mattered. Some of them were important to the plot, or became important to the plot, or something. And it was good. It was really good. And it is even now still worth exploring. Even it's in book 1 of that 4 there. So it was a long time ago. And it ended up being like 72 pages or something like that. I mean, my shortest is like, other than the stuff that I abandoned in a half page, I mean, I've had some really good things in just 3 pages. And this was 70, and it was good. It took a while to actually get anywhere, like some of my stuff does, but I really liked it, and I might go back to it. So I actually found a way to take advantage of the fact that I had only written on half of the page, or half of the available pages, by flipping it over and continuing. And in a sense, I have made it, I have given myself room to take notes, like I said earlier, and I've given myself kind of an out in case I have something that runs over length. Although usually if I don't have very many pages left, I'll move on to the next book and I'll leave like a few trailing blank pages just because I don't want to have to do that kind of thing again. But I still have some of those are like, I'm on the last page and I'm like crunch. And I've actually written like right on the very bottom edge of the page just to like really quickly wrap it up. But there's sometimes when I've got like 3 lines on one page and I end it and the ending comes and it's good there. And I don't try to fill up the rest of the page. And I certainly had no opportunity to like crunch it on the previous page, or things don't end neatly. So the half a page, half of the pages thing really works. It really works well. There was a thing that I wanted to mention that fell out of my head. Maybe I'll remember when I watch this in a month or a year. But so yeah. Oh, hey, I remembered. So regarding notes on the off page, I was experimenting very briefly with as I'm writing. You write from left to, well, English writes from left to right, top to bottom, and so I'd be writing. What is this from your perspective? Like this. And so I'd be writing and I'd have an idea or a note. And if I remember to, because sometimes I get fixed in the moment of completing a sentence and have an idea, and it's like falling asleep when you have an idea and you think you can remember it, but you can't. You wake up, I had a thing. I think it was pretty good, I guess. And you might think that that'll happen as you're writing a sentence. Sometimes it won't. Sometimes it won't, and you'll regret it. And you might think that it'll just come back up later, but it won't. And it might come up when you're rereading it, in which case, hey, I wrote it in pen. I can't change it. Too bad. What I've learned to do, or what I was experimenting with, what I think I'm still going to keep trying to do, I'm getting good at holding keywords in my head, is as I go through a sentence, I might think of a keyword, some idea, something or other. I want to boil it down to one word, and I'll write at the bottom of the page. I'll write at the very bottom line of the page and like have a little number 1 associating, little 1 next to the note, little 1 next to where I was when I had the thought. And I keep writing, and I have this list as a scratch list that I can refer to. And so and then I would go to the next line up, kind of like writing in reverse, bottom line, second last line, third last line as I'm going up, so that I'm writing down kind of like the way it's the incorrect way of doing, almost like the way footnotes work, right? But the bottom list, because I'm building from the bottom up, I don't have some defined space where I begin my footnotes and flow it down, because I can't do things like a computer. So there's kind of a way of using one page and having keywords written there available associated with that one page. And I did that, and then I ran out of, I had like one line and then a second line, and then the text and the notes were kind of converging, and I had little notes line. I was writing notes and I ran out of space. So what I had to do is like continue point number 3 on the next page at the bottom. And there's always issues with some weird experiment that I'm going with. At any rate, yeah, I made the 2 points and rambled on, hopefully interestingly. So yeah, this is just to supplement the previous video before I forget a couple of the points that rounded out a little bit more.